Did we ever decide if it was tar and feather or tarred and feathered?
Tar and feathered.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be tarred, like you were tarred?
I mean,
What?
I guess you could
How
you
is
think of
the-
it that way.
Well, actual grammar question. Is it tar, or like when you do the action, the adjective versus the fucking adverb, the verb? You know, is it tar or tarred? Kind of like swim and swam. Swam's not a fucking word. The conjugation of the verb.
You know, I personally don't know, but you know what I do know? Welcome, everyone. It's episode 1, Tar and Feathered. On today's episode, we're going to be discussing when socialists attack socialism. I am Tyler. This is Robert. And I guess I'll start off by saying what exactly I mean by that. So over was it the weekend or just this week? I actually don't remember.
Oh, well, we watched it earlier this week, so I think it happened like last Friday, so like the 17th,
Okay.
18th,
I mean, but
like
within
that.
a week's time. A pretty large a video that I could only actually find the full length of on Facebook for some strange reason. I don't know why it was on YouTube. I ended up going into it, and it was the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, where she was interviewed.
Who I hate saying that name just because it's hard for me to pronounce, so...
It's because you're white.
Correct. And with a speech impediment. Whatever. So I'm just going to say AOC. And
that's
all
perfectly fine.
future reference throughout the rest of the show, AOC.
Okay. During it, she was asked a myriad of questions, ranging mainly, I would say, around just politics and economics.
Right, based loosely around the premise of the whole video was her opinion surrounding MLK and black communities.
It was the MLK
Memorial
something like that or I don't know if it was a podcast.
It was videotaped and a live saying they were up on stage at an auditorium of sorts. Some sort of theater, not Lincoln Theater, sadly. Ford Theater.
Oh, where he was shot?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Anyway, while she was there, she was asked a question on what was it? Constantly throughout, I don't know who that guy's name was. I forget what it was.
He was just some random interviewer person.
I should say, very, very quick side note, I cannot stand when people are listening to me and just constantly go,
I understand every now and then, like, when they're at the end of a phrase, you want to affirm you're still listening. That's something very commonly taught in active listening courses. Because there's precisely...
Active listening, exactly. And at one point, she got on the topic of the New Deal and said about how, well, it was actually, I should say it was on reparations, and went into saying that reparations aren't just necessarily about slavery or about segregation, but rather they will also be about the New Deal. And when I went, immediately I had to pause the video because I was absolutely dumbfounded by what that
Wait
meant,
a
because
minute.
I've never heard of anyone talking, for literally not a single person ever in my life talking about there needs to be reparations for the New Deal. If you don't know, if you don't
on the New Deal,
if you don't know, the New Deal was a massive.
I think this is the point where the listeners are whole ass adults, and if they don't know
What the New Deal is,
they should just go to Wikipedia.
Absolutely, and I would say that. Just go to Wikipedia, look it up. But yeah, so the idea is the New Deal, massive amounts of social spending. So it was basically the government paying out money to, people in the country. So this idea that we need reparations for a large
Success.
number of programs that were going on that end up paying people money, I don't exactly understand that, because reparations, historically are about negative, like social ills
You've done something wrong and you are being punished.
you need to pay for it. So that's why usually when you think of reparations, you think of things like slavery, you think of things like segregation. She brought up the Holocaust, about how Germany has paid its reparations.
And because of that truth-finding process, that's how they were able to heal. In America, we never went through that healing process, because that's the only way to heal, is to be in trouble. To be put in the corner and said, bad, here's your dunce cap, which is considered hazing nowadays, by the way.
Well, of course it is. Everything is hazing. But, and so I went into that. I was like, I'm so intrigued as to what she means by we need to pay reparations for the New Deal. So as I went through I continued on the video, she was saying the premise of the idea is because of the government at the time, which was like pro-white or majority
right,
white.
That was what she was getting at, is that the New Deal was inherently racist because it as she said, it drew red lines around black neighborhoods, and everyone outside those lines were the ones benefiting from like lower interest house loans through these works programs and the tax benefits, and the black community suffered, and that they've never recovered from that because these homes were passed down as heirlooms and through generations, and so white people have always had the advantage that no minority can catch up to. So what she's saying is that really only white people should be the ones paying these reparations.
Oh, absolutely. Only white people should be paying reparations.
Which, wonders of the internet. For those who don't know about the New Deal, here is the very first sentence from the Wikipedia page. A very succinct summary. The New Deal, in bold, was a series of programs, public work projects, financial reforms, and regulations enacted by President Franklin D. Roosevelt in the United States between 1933 and 1936.
And there you go. But wait, what about the it only affects like white people part? I bet if you kept reading, it would have said something about that.
I'm sorry, Jamie. There's just nothing about that. Well, there's the first New Deal, the second New Deal.
Yeah, there were different parts to it and everything.
You know, I didn't actually know that. I never really thought of the distinctions. I'd always just read about it as a whole.
Mm-hmm. But, and then she continues on to say that even now, that these that we're still affected by this, even to this day. And after going through that, and mind you, this is also the same interview or discussion that you've probably seen, videos on, or that I couldn't help but see in my Facebook feed a video by that one idiot, the Rant Nation guy that you thought I was confusing with.
Gavin McGinnis.
No. He has a beard. He's on.
Yeah, no, we've talked about this. I don't know who you mean that I confused him with. I remember that. Oh, Phil Robertson.
Yeah, I confused him with Phil. No, you thought I was talking about Phil Robertson when I was talking about the guy from Rant Nation who I cannot stand. And he was talking about how she was comparing our generation to, like, this is America's World War II, and what she was meaning was our generation's World War II in terms of climate change. And he completely took it a different way, and it was stupid, but
People who make their living off of inflammatory statements sometimes take things out of context.
I can't.
What?
I'll never listen to it simply because the name of the program is literally Rant Nation.
See, I won't listen to it because of his visible tattoos.
And
Very
he's a grunt.
He was a sniper. He has the reticle tattooed on his forearm, so everyone knows. But, housing sector. Here we go.
Okay.
AOC specifically brought up the housing and how that was the racist part of it.
Mm-hmm.
The New Deal had an important impact on the housing field. The New Deal followed and increased President Hoover's lead and seek measures. Don't know what that means, to be honest. The New Deal sought to stimulate the private home building industry and increase the number of individuals who owned homes. The New Deal implemented 2 new housing agencies, Homeowners Loan Corporation and the Federal Housing Administration. The HOLC set uniform national appraisal methods and simplified the mortgage process. The Federal Housing Administration created national standards for home construction. Obviously racist.
Obviously
Both
racist.
of them. Setting nationwide appraising methods in a simplified paperwork. Racist.
And so as I was going through this in my head, I'm thinking to myself, so one of the ideas in, not one of the biggest ideas in socialism is we're going to take money and redistribute it so that way we can alleviate the ills that, exist in society. And so this is, by very definition, from what the New Deal is doing, especially with Medicare or Social Security, this is exactly what socialists would want. But this idea that...
That's when you follow a logical path. That's the right process.
So people pay into a system that other people can get, so that way they aren't dying when they hit 65 or 70 when they can't work anymore. That's the idea. It's supposed to alleviate the ills.
The burden, and the burden upon their children who are striving. Well, really is also because that money that the younger generation would spend on the old, they want spent somewhere else. We're a capitalist-based society. So when you focus all that money, all that extra money just for caring for the old, other places are hurting. So then government steps in.
And then it can also be used for disability and things like that.
Which, perfectly okay with, to an extent.
How dare you betray your libertarian views like that?
Gary Johnson is rolling around in all his money crying right now.
Yeah, just still probably doesn't know what Aleppo is, however. But
I think he probably had a brief afterwards, but does he give a fuck?
Probably not.
Now that he's not in contention anymore?
Absolutely not.
Also, socialist news. Bernie Sanders running for 2020. It's confirmed.
Is it confirmed? You know what's also confirmed? Ojeda, the bald guy that was in the Michael Moore documentary. He was running. He was a major in the army.
Oh, the West Virginia Democrat.
Yes.
Wasn't bald, but he had a fade.
Oh, he had
a very low fade.
First Democrat to drop out of the 2020 election.
Well, yeah, he never stood. He couldn't win the Senate. Yeah. So just like Beto O'Rourke doesn't have a fucking.
Not even Senate. He was in the Senate, I think, of his state, and then ran for a representative in Congress and lost.
Yeah, he never won a national election.
No.
He's just too fiery for most people. Too old school. Well, exactly. I think that's what most. Might be toxic masculinity talking here, but most veterans and most younger males, he'd get their vote in a heartbeat. Like, this is a dude who actually went and fucking did shit overseas. Most of us can't say anymore. Yeah. And got shit done. That gets my vote almost instantly. Like, yes, his views are still very important, but his integrity, he means what he's talking about regardless.
Absolutely. But to bring this back to what I was saying...
socialism.
So, I was, thinking about this for a very long time. Why, how can you go... And what really got me was, we need to pay reparations now because... And sorry,
of something our living grandparents...
might have done, which I don't think ever happened. But... I'm trying to think about how to even put this into words. If currently that was the system in place, it would need to be changed. But that's not what she's talking about changing. She's talking about we need to pay for the system that was once an issue. And let me be clear. This issue then started because of socialism.
Right. Well,
this existed because of socialism.
Well, and it's also particularly confusing because a lot of the programs that she advocates for, what she directly talked about to her constituency as an inner city, a generalization is a lot of them benefit from SNAP, or known as food stamps, but officially known as SNAP, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, HUD, Housing Urban Development, Section 8 housing, welfare, whether it be SSA or whatever, disability, that's SSA includes disability and whatnot. All of these are very socialist-minded programs paid for through tax money that she advocates for. Most of them have their roots, if not their direct roots, from the New Deal. So the fact that she is then saying the New Deal was racist is completely contradicting itself. And that's what blows my mind the most. Like, I get, like, if she just randomly said, like, oh, well, it's racist. Like, okay, everything's racist nowadays. But the things her very constituency voted her in for, because she said, we're going to keep these programs, we're going to expand these programs, and we're going to make more programs like this. But because it was a white guy who implemented it, racist. Now, to be fair, it was the 30s and 40s. There was still a lot of active racism going on, so I'll give her the benefit of the doubt. Were workers handling the cases in those organizations, were they racist? Maybe did some sketchy shit? Honestly, probably. But the program itself isn't.
And I would go to probably say I agree with almost everything you said. But my issue though with what she was going on when she says that we need to pay reparations because
completely out of line.
Well, and then it goes even further. So what you're saying is, so at worst, she is completely being intellectually dishonest and is just pandering to her base.
Yes, which I completely reject the idea that she is actually that stupid. That
wouldn't be stupid. That is being dishonest, and she's actually pretty smart.
That's what I'm saying is I'm giving her the benefit of the doubt in that she is an intellectual person who, like, it's very hard to get the amount of support you need to run for a congressional office if you're a dummy. If you're a retard in any capacity, you're not going to get that level of support. Just being able to manipulate people the way she does, I mean, she's got something ticking around in there. So, yeah, it is complete dishonesty on her part. It's her duping her fucking constituency and assuming that they're dumb enough to fall for it.
What I would say is, so, at worst, she's intellectually dishonest. At best, what you're saying is...
She's an honest idiot. Which
in the 1930s, when the New Deal, so for these Democratic socialists...
Lots of racism still abundant.
Were going on that... At the time, they were racist, but I guarantee you, and again, this is going off of her logic. At the time, I guarantee you, none of the Democrats that were passing this thought to themselves, "Oh, this is racist at all," in the slightest.
Yeah, how will this affect the black community versus the white community?
If they probably thought to themselves, "Well, 100 years before us in the 1830s, oh, they were the real racists, so we're fine.
We're worlds ahead of them. We don't have slavery anymore."
Not even 100 years later, you're going back and saying, well, they were the racists, but we're not the racists. Who's to say in 2119 that if she were to pass something...
You mean after we've established alien contact, and, well, by then it won't be racist, like, they were xenophobes.
Who is to say that in another 100 years that anything... that you would want to pass is not also will be viewed through the lens of racism.
Hindsight's always 20/20.
And so it gives you a really good, like, it's a very damning position to be in, then, if...
Being able to look at our current societal standards and trying to gauge them from an outside perspective, it's almost impossible.
So, if you're a socialist, but you view the world through the lens of racism, I don't think they are compatible with one another. Because you cannot say that, well, now we're not racist, but 100 years ago, we were.
Those socialists
were racist.
But
nowadays, we're not. Because I guarantee you, 100 years ago, because again, the idea of socialism, and everything I'm saying, this is for them, their best. This is what they think to them is the best. I am trying to alleviate social ills. I'm trying to help people.
See, I always hate that argument because the other day I watched an interview. I watched the entire hour of Ben Shapiro interviewing what's his name?
Anti-Semitic racist Ben Shapiro.
The biggest Jew is the worst friend of the Jews, of course.
He's right, you know.
Oh, I forget his name. It's like Alan West or something. Either way,
the general.
No, Colonel. He made it to Colonel.
Colonel, yeah.
Yeah, but he pointed out, and it's a little known fact, but it should be a very known fact, was that the Democratic Party, the origins of them were the creators of the KKK. Back in the day, they were the most racist party. And it's crazy how generalities, black communities are very heavy on family. They're very heavy on their religion. They're very heavy on their societal norms, which that sounds a lot like modern Republicans. But yet they don't vote for Republicans because the Democrats have a better outreach program. And even, that's another point he makes, all these outreach programs are themselves, like, demeaning.
I mean, you're basically assuming the worst in people. When most Democrats would assume anyone that has brown skin, that's like Latino,
is challenged, and they need our help.
They support the wall. I mean, come on now. You're what, Mexican? Oh, what, Honduras? Whatever. You're brown.
You're all the same.
You don't support the wall.
You're not white.
You're a Democrat.
You're a person of color.
What happens when your family, that's illegals, get deported by President Trump?
Actually, we all came here legally.
That's a very strange thing to say to someone. But yeah, no, I completely understand what you're getting at. And so, it's socialism, I think, and you would agree with this, is I mean, the idea...
Inherently evil.
Well, I don't know. Well, they're at least trying to better the world. Again.
That's what their message is.
They're at least trying.
Correct.
They're at least trying. I'm not just nothing else. A socialist would say, I'm trying to improve. I'm trying to help people.
Well, not quite a tangent, but that always makes me. That type of argument always makes me think of Avatar: The Last Airbender. There's a scene when they're. Do you remember when they found the giant library in the desert and it was guarded by the
Yes, I know everything about Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Well, they were arguing, like, no, we need these secrets to win this war because our side is correct, and the giant terrifying owl creature is like, you think you're the only one who thought your war was justified? Mm-hmm. And that's how I view that. Like, well, with the socialist avenue of things, like, we're trying to make a better world. It's like, you think you're the only one who used that argument? Hitler also used that argument.
No, absolutely. But what I'm saying is, at their best, they're trying to improve the world. And my issue is, if you view the world, so you're a socialist, as AOC is, but then you're also this culture warrior, this, I don't want to use the term cultural Marxist, because I think at this point it's almost a ridiculous expression now with Jordan Peterson. But what I'm saying is, when you view the world through the lens of race constantly, but yet you're trying to strive for socialism, which by in its very nature doesn't view race as anything. I mean, despite what you will say about communism, despite literally hundreds and hundreds of faults, they are the exact opposite of fascists in the sense that they are the opposite of nationalists.
Well,
they don't care about nationality.
Right, they don't draw lines in the sand. Everyone's a person subject to the machine.
Exactly. So despite the massive pitfalls, obviously, of communism, that's the one thing that makes it so completely different from fascism is instead of the ultra-nationalism that fascism is, communism does not care at all about your race.
So where does the socialist fall into this far right, far left continuum?
I know it's probably hard for the camera, but if far left, far right, they're about right there.
So you're saying center left?
They are, yes. Socialists are center left, by any standard political
But then
definition.
most modern democratic socialists, I think, are much closer to the actual Marxism than they are any centrist position.
If you know what again, I'm not insulting you, but if you know what actual Marxism is, no, there's no one in Congress, I think, that even comes close to Marxism.
Oh, of course. They would never, what they advocate for openly is never going to be anything that extreme.
Sure, and I can completely agree with that, because I think that
they would
majority,
never get anywhere.
This is going to sound like a conspiracy theory almost, but I would say the majority, and I do mean the majority, more than 50% of politicians are atheists, but they're closeted. They will refuse to acknowledge it because they know if they were to ever say that...
It's bad for the votes.
Exactly.
It's bad for the constituency.
You're not going to get elected. No one would get elected if they're an atheist.
Which is how I view
no one would.
Most of these democratic socialists, because if they just even came out and said, I'm a full-blown socialist, even the generally uneducated individuals in America would be like, whoa, I know that's a bad thing. I don't know why it's a bad thing, but I've been taught that's a bad thing. But when you throw the word democratic, they're like, hey, they still believe our votes matter. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
I mean, there is a difference between, I guess you could say true socialism and democratic socialism.
Well, right.
There is a difference.
Well, what I'm getting at is, like you said, with the closeted atheism, I believe these ones who are democratic socialists
are closeted Marxists.
Right.
Ooh.
I don't think, I think it's a very sly thing, but Bernie Sanders, some of the things he said have been very sketchy.
They want to abolish private property?
That is something that, going back to our original topic, AOC, that's what she's talking about when we need reparations for minorities for what happened. That's the first stepping stone. Once you get it to that point where this has to be done in this name of wealth distribution. I know welfare distribution.
I personally believe in welfare distribution.
Yeah, it's called your tax refund. Oh, yeah. You're welcome, bitch. That money we took from you, we actually took too much. Mm-hmm. Here you go.
Yeah.
Which,
as a joke. No, that was it.
Well, yes, as a joke it works, but then you look at, okay, what'd you put on your W-4? You told them to take that much from you. Which, here in the military, it's extremely difficult to change your W-4, which is why we both end up owing money to our state every year. Because it's almost impossible for us to go back and change our withholding statement. Mm-hmm. Everyone at boot camp was just told 0.
Yeah.
0. Which fucks you.
Mm-hmm. But, so yeah, there's this again,
I
hate
think
to
they're
use the
closeted
term.
Marxists. Democratic socialists, public democratic socialists, I think are closeted Marxists.
But I want to ask you this question, though. And this is a big thing that I was thinking about. Cultural Marxists, in the sense that, you know, they want to abolish like race and everything like that, and
admirable idea.
Sure, but what she's going at is she views everything through the lens of race, and I know some people might think like, okay, you're strawmanning her, but I mean, let's be real.
She directly advocated for whites to pay reparation for the New Deal, a national program, not slavery, which only affected a few. The New Deal, which was taken, it affected everybody's taxes. Everybody who paid taxes, every American citizen at the time, it affected everybody equally. Like, well, you can argue the equally with Rockefeller and
richer
those
gonna
types.
pay more. Yeah.
But generalities.
Can socialism, because it's so, by its very definition, so it's against race. It's like basically it's antithetical. It's antithetical to racism. Can you be this almost a social justice warrior type mixed with a socialist? Can that even exist? Because as a socialist,
That's a good point. I hadn't thought of that.
And that's what I was thinking about.
Because, like, in most places that have tried socialism, they had a de facto ethno-state. Like, Cuba.
Venezuela.
They were all Cubans. Russia. They were all white.
No. The Soviet Union is horrible. The Soviet Union was comprised of multiple Soviet states, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan,
yes,
Belarus, Ukraine.
Yes, but they didn't discriminate. They took white people in just as fast as anything else. The majority of their victims were white.
I would just say that the reason why the Soviet Union was able to exist for so long and they're able to accumulate all these states so easily is because they didn't care about race. And,
right.
But
well, that's what I'm saying, though, is like... But for the most part, like,
Russia,
yes,
I would say, is very much an ethno-state. It's very much Russian.
Oh, yeah,
but the Soviet Union was not at all.
Right. But when you think of the Soviet Union, you think predominantly
the
Russia,
Russian Republic
even
was the
Eastern
biggest.
Europe.
Was the biggest
Czechoslovakia, all of them, Georgia, blah, 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 which Georgia's now a part of Russia again. And we did nothing about it. Absolutely nothing. But I digress. Next is going to be Ukraine. And we'd better do something about that. But, anyways, yes.
That's a whole different episode.
That's a whole different episode.
Yes, that is massive. At least in my opinion. I hate the fact that no one discusses that.
Yeah. But getting back to it, is...
Can they coexist
social
together?
Justice warriors compatible with a socialist mindset? They will argue yes, but...
Absolutely. But I'm asking your opinion.
No,
do you really
absolutely
think
not.
Can't without a double think.
Right, when you lay it out, socialists don't give a fuck. Race, creed, blah, 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 blah. We're all gray blobs. We're all part of the machine.
We're all humans, yes.
Versus social justice warriors, I'm trans, I deserve special treatment. I'm black, I deserve special treatment. I'm a black, Jewish, trans, Israelite.
Whoa, Judaism brings it down. Yeah,
they do argue for Palestine, don't they?
Yep, they do. No, Jews are the only group that, despite being persecuted the most out of any group ever in the history of the world,
they still don't
don't get anything. They really don't.
Which I think the same people argue, well, the Jews have Israel, but at the same time they'll argue that Israel should be a part of Palestine.
Yeah. The Jews have Israel despite like 4 wars with a coalition of like almost every Arab state. Or not Arab state, Islamic state declaring war at them at the same time.
The 6 Day War was so glorious.
and through a genocide, and that's not even including the persecution that they have been suffering through
since biblical times.
Since biblical times in Europe. I mean, if you want to know about persecution of the Jews, please look up them during the Black Death, during the bubonic plague.
Oh, you're Jewish, you're fucked.
They thought the Jews were poisoning the wells in these areas. So if you were Jewish, you would be literally attacked.
That they've survived this long proves that they are truly God's people. I just wanted to say that because I know it'd cause that eye roll.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, so I do not see how the two of them can coexist, because they are almost the antithesis of one another.
They draw the most lines in the sand in the name of inclusion.
In the exact opposite way of inclusion. It's incredible.
And it's getting to the point, which my favorite is, that they're starting to fracture themselves, which is something that was happening in the Soviet Union as well. It was getting to the point where everyone was the enemy. There was no safe place to be unless you were a part of the established regime. Mm-hmm. Even gaining a spot, therefore, in the regime was nigh impossible. Mm-hmm. Like, there's extremely few people who lived through the time of Stalin up through Gorbachev. Like Khrushchev. I am terrible at Russian names. Like, absolutely horrendous.
Who is that? I've never heard of that guy.
That is a flaw in mine, because I've developed a great interest in the history of Russia.
It's a fantastic, it is an incredible
and the
history.
fact that the Russian people have still hold on to their love of the motherland above even the government is just like, that's what we should all be aspiring to. Not to the extent they take it, but that they've survived for so long and maintained their identity. But digressing again, rabbit holes. Yes, you'll find very few people who lived through the modern USSR and made it out. Which is where we get people like the author, I won't even try and pronounce his name, the author of the Gulag Archipelago. The fact that he went to Libya, he went through their prison camps and made it out to then speak about the atrocities.
I would just say, though, as a small little like caveat to that, though, there is a massive difference between the Lenin-Stalinist Soviet Union and the Khrushchev post-Soviet Union.
Yes, but they are still perpetuating atrocities.
Absolutely.
To a lesser scale. Yes.
Lenin was pretty brutal, and then Stalin, he was probably literally only second to literally Adolf Hitler of the Third Reich, only maybe second to him. That is how brutal Stalin was.
But his body count was higher.
His body count was higher.
His reasons for is the only redeeming factor. Again, that socialist idea. He didn't give a fuck who you were. You disagree with me?
Well, anyone he saw as even a remote threat to his power.
Even his own son.
I don't know about... I don't know that one.
Yes.
I just know about his son that was captured by the Nazis, and they were like, "We'll trade you some. If you trade us like a couple generals for him, we'll give him back." And he said no. I do know about that. It is pretty brutal. Imagine being that guy. But yeah, anyone he saw as a threat, even a remote threat, like basically every single remote friend you could have ever had, was eventually killed. But yeah, it was just absolutely brutal dictator. And the Soviet Union, obviously, yeah, if you lived through the Stalinist regime, very few people did. Just because, again, of how, like, what was it, during the Great Purge, I think it was 36 through 38, roughly, he killed, I think it was like over 500,000 dissidents. And again, this wasn't like a rebellion or anything. This was literally...
Actually, I have it up. Official records reveal... Official records. 799,455 documented executions in the Soviet Union between 21 and 53. 681,692 of these were carried out between 37 and 38.
Okay.
In one year.
Yeah. During that 2-year period, about 600,000. So
the Great Purge, the actual estimates, according to Michael Ellman, some sort of historian, the best modern estimate for the number of repression deaths during the Great Purge is 950,000 to 1.2 million.
Sorry, can you say that one again? That number?
I'll read the whole sentence. I'm going to have to look up who this is. Because this is a cited Wikipedia article.
If you just type in Great Purge, like general, like,
this
casualties.
is through the Stalin page, which if I click this, it goes to the Great Purge link.
Okay.
So, however, according to Michael Ellman, the best modern estimate for the number of repression deaths during the Great Purge is 950,000 to 1.2 million, which includes executions, deaths in detention, or soon after their release. So, who is this Michael Ellman? Michael Ellman has been a professor of economics at the University of Amsterdam since 1978.
But yeah, so that's
insanity.
Basically what I was getting. Yeah, as I was saying, yeah, it's pretty brutal. But I want to bring it back to the overall idea of, so we agree that these ideas can't really coexist. They really can't, can they?
Well,
so I would say then, I think this is about the end of this, is where do you see then this going, this combination of a almost a social justice mentality mixed with a democratic socialist mentality? Where do you think this might go?
I think within our lifetime, we will see a democratic socialist elected president, and they will try to assert that's when their true intentions, I think, will show up. And I think after that,
what are their true
yet again, them being closeted Marxists.
Oh, really?
You
think they would just like flip the script and just
right?
Ooh, man, that's almost conspiracy.
Well, that's kind of how FDR did it. His program, his use of authoritarian power kind of started to increase more and more over the years. And our executive power already is way too high. I think that will be that push that they'll be like, hey, boom, here it is. And I think they...
Do you think the gulags are coming?
Absolutely not.
Okay. I thought for a second Wells was here, and I think faith.
Again, I have faith that the American people, just like Trump, I want to say he probably won't win re-election, but he's got a very good strategy. But a full democratic socialist who just goes a little too far out of picture from that script, it'll ruin that party in America for the rest of our lifetimes once that happens. That's my ultimate view. Will they win president? Like, Bernie Sanders has a very strong chance against Trump.
He's running. I don't think he's running this year. This year, or for 2020. I don't think he's going to run.
Quick fact. I just want to do a quick one because I just saw that article peripherally.
I have not seen that.
I had to put in my passcode again. How obnoxious.
My biggest fear is
them
that
gaining power and retaining power.
They would get power. It would turn out Well, I wouldn't even say well, because if it turning out well, then, I mean, that's good for everyone, right? But my biggest fear is they gain power, and...
I'll argue that it'll be, even if it comes out well, at what cost?
Exactly.
Is my personal liberty worth it? If we can... one of the best arguments that... When I watched this when I was about 18, is a video from... former Force Recon Marine. I held him in very high esteem at the time, but in one of his just random shooting videos, he got a little deep and political, and he made the argument, he didn't make the argument, he just stated the question, and this was from a pro-Second Amendment stance. He's like, if we got rid of all guns, if we were able to outlaw all guns, the government was magically able to seize all firearms from every individual in America, and it truly made us a safer place, even then, would that loss of personal liberty be worth it?
And some people would say yes.
Some people would say yes.
And by some, I mean, I think it's almost like 50-50 split.
I agree. It's probably is 50-50. But, so that argument for me, my stance on it, if socialism was the answer, if total government control was the answer and it improved everybody's lives, like, statistically, would it be worth it? I would argue no. My personal freedom is more valuable than anything the government can provide me. Because anything that is provided can be taken away. Which, that's one of the earliest lessons I think most people learn in life. Your parents use that argument, either I brought you into this world, I can take you out, or just like, I pay for that cell phone, I pay for the internet, I can take it away. You're grounded. Give me.
I think that sums up almost exactly what I would personally say. I think that absolutely that freedom is more important, because someone asked what's more important, freedom or safety, and that is the definition of someone that is much more liberal in the traditional sense.
Yes.
A liberal versus someone that I don't even know what the other side of that would be.
Pro-government.
A much more pro-federalized type of government would be. But yeah, I think we've pretty much gone through everything.
And we went through this whole topic without bringing up anything from Orwell, anything from Huxley.
Absolutely.
Which, those are all great examples. I think that should be required reading in any educational program. 1982, Animal Farm, almost anything by Aldous Huxley, most notably,
you know what,
Brave New World.
But you know what Orwell was? A socialist.
He was reformed.
But yeah, so I think I definitely think we definitely went through everything, and I am still at her AOC is what I'm referring to, and her positions that, in my opinion, are complete double thinks of one another, and I don't think they can coexist. I do think they will implode. I really do, because you can't hold these two positions, honestly.
Well, and at some point in her career in public relations, which is what a representative of Congress is, that's their entire job. At some point, she isn't going to be able to keep deferring the way she does. Ben Shapiro asked, remember before she was even elected, just during the election cycle, Ben Shapiro asked, hey, come on, I invite you to come just talk with me on my show.
This is like catcalling.
Yep.
It's like catcalling.
She can't do that forever. She can't run away from an educated argument forever.
Before you get torched.
Not before, especially not when it comes to re-election time. She might be able to do it for this whole cycle, where she's only grants interviews with establishments that agree with her. Huffington Post, CNN, MSNBC, you know, like, the list goes on.
I don't think she'll be doing an interview with Breitbart anytime soon.
She won't be on Fox News. She won't be on Glenn Beck, Ben Shapiro, Steven Crowder.
Yeah.
Especially not Steven Crowder.
Yeah.
Even though he is half Canadian. We can't fault him for that. God bless him.
But yeah, so I think we really went through the whole topic. I have been Tyler. Been
Robert.
This has been Tar and Feathered. I hope you guys stick around for next episode.
Or will there be an